This one,
Sure.
it just kind of, sometimes it's nice to have the dialogue beforehand too, so.
Certainly, certainly.
So I wasn't trying to drop names to, when I was putting that little elevator speech out
No,
there.
not at all.
What I'm trying to say is, there's a paper side of getting your form together. Your whole pro forma, your projected earnings, you know, debt prop, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the other side of business where, it's fun. It's your calling. It's really your passion. And you gotta do that mix. So, the businesses that I have started and then sold always started out as fun and play and then took off. Does that make sense? And then I got into another adventure and sold that and went to another thing. And none of them ever started in an office or a bank, right? So, I'm curious to, you know, I'm really curious to see this because I have some things that I'm thinking about starting.
We think that it's a really powerful tool, genuinely.
Yeah.
And one of the problems, and this I can promise I'm gonna say it again, is that there are 6.5 million companies that start in this country every year. And about 200,000 of them receive traditional funding, and that's banks, venture capitalists, or angel investments. That's 6.3 million companies year over year over year that don't get funded. People like to throw out the statistic that like half of small businesses fail in 2.5 years, and 75% of them don't make it past 10, right? But when you have 6.3 million companies year over year over year not receiving growth funding, not receiving operating capital infusions, the expectation that we have that small businesses fail all the time, that small businesses are this terrible investment, well, I wonder what would happen if they were funded.
They weren't set up to fail.
Right?
Right.
If you tell me that you have to run your small business and literally everyone has to bootstrap, well, listen, there ain't that much strain in the world.
Right.
Like, it's just not. And so one of the things we see as an opportunity built into the crowdfunding model is that if you can convince somebody, if you can convince your customer, especially if you're a B2C model, if you can convince your customer that you exist and that you have a viable answer to a demand that already exists for them, they can invest. No one is ever going to be a better investor than someone who already believes in what you're trying to do.
Right.
Right? So, and that doesn't require you convincing, finding a venture capital investor, right? Then finding them when they have time to actually listen to the thing. You have 30 seconds, an elevator pitch is not enough to describe a business. It
Right.
is not.
Right.
It's not sufficient. You need 5 minutes, you need 10 minutes,
Right.
you need an hour to explain to somebody why your business matters. The idea that we can condense our ideas that should be world-changing ideas into a 30-second pitch is ludicrous.
Yeah, I know.
But if I told you that you can give a mass of people your information, you can record a video of yourself explaining why what you're doing matters. We think that that's a powerful idea. We think that there's some work there. So hopefully we can take that number from 6.3 million unfunded companies. Maybe it's down to 6. Maybe it's down to 5.5. Who knows what the breadth can be?
Right.
That remains to be seen. But we certainly think there need to be a few more lanes on the road. Right. The
Right.
traffic is too
Right.
heavy. When it is one exit or
Yeah.
2 exits.
Yeah.
We got to add some more
Yeah.
space.
It's just lovely. Okay.
Is there something? Okay.
Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome. I'm not really a fan of giving speeches.
Yes.
No. I really like talking, but I like talking to people. So I'm probably going to ask you all to introduce yourselves when we get started, just because I feel like it's better than just talking to a room full of faces that I don't know. So
And you're gonna remember them all, right?
I'm going to do my best. I usually do pretty okay.
You
I
could
usually
do like
do pretty
I do
okay.
when I start a new job, I do a sheet chart.
I'm just going to write down
Each
the names.
cubicle, which person's in.
Right. Everyone thanks you.
Yeah.
We all just made some resolutions, just keep on.
No
firing.
more donuts?
Just help us out.
Well, I sent the LinkedIn notice to a friend of mine that has just quit working in HR and wants to start a consulting business, HR consulting business. So I don't know if she's gonna watch it or not, but she knows to find it. Am I blocking it?
No, you're fine. You are in the shot though. Just so you know.
My best side, right there.
EJ, may I have you for 1 minute? To act as my auditor?
Hello. Welcome, welcome.
Oh, you want us to sign it?
Signing in would be great.
Mention that when you were talking.
Well, I didn't make the sign-in sheet, full disclosure. That's a Ron Marshall thing, so I forgot that I should speak on his behalf too. Grab a card or two. Any cards up there?
Where's our?
Appreciate that.
Or actually, Ron Marshall?
Hey.
We have to send you an email, so give me. Okay, it's in immediately. Let me call you back at this number in 5 minutes if you're not automatically on, if that's what we're trying to figure out. All right, will do. All right, bye. Okay, hello everybody. I'm Ron Marshall. I am attempting to solve a technical issue with the web portion because living in the real world and the online world can sometimes be challenging. So we're wrestling with Google right now. That's okay, I have more fingers than thumbs. But I do want you guys to go ahead and be able to get started with our great guest speakers. We have 2 speakers in from Michigan Funders. They're going to talk to us about crowdfunding, as they already have been. Niles Heron, and if you could introduce yourself,
David
David.
Tesler.
David
Tesler.
All right.
Yep.
So they're partners in Michigan Funders. They help people find equity funding in Metro Detroit and in all of Michigan. And they're going to be the people who will be guiding you through this journey. We are going to have a couple of people who have said that they're going to be late. My intention was for us to start at 6:15 anyway with the formal portion. So if you guys want to go ahead and get started, I'll let you guys kind of direct that to get going. The video will take care of itself.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What is our schedule or our runner program?
We're looking for 15 minutes of you guys talking till about 6:15, and then hardcore knowledge being pushed into everyone's minds. Q&A following that at the end of your program, and then some brief networking after that.
Okay.
There are donuts. There are
We
chips.
saw that.
Subsist yourselves.
Ron, where's the light switch for the
Uh,
hallway?
oh, out there.
Well, as you come in, it's dark.
Yeah,
In the
yeah,
hall.
Downstairs?
The stair hallway.
Okay, I'll take care of that too.
Okay.
All right. But you'll have to give me a minute while I kick Google's butt with these guys for about 5 minutes. And I would love it if everyone would introduce themselves if you have not already to the group. All right. Thanks a lot.
I already let them know that was coming.
Okay, cool. I'll trust you now. You're the man.
That's not a good choice.
Okay, so you did it.
Not a trustworthy guy.
So who wants to introduce me?
Yeah, who wants to start? This is Heidi. I know Heidi.
Yeah.
because
Hello,
she was
Heidi.
here. We already met and talked.
Sir,
Hi, my name's Heidi, and I'm curious, and I think it's just wonderful to see an alternative to the traditional options of capital.
Well, hi, my name is LaFree. I was invited here by a friend of mine. She's actually, I know you're late, but.
It's not very nice.
I know, I knew she was gonna do it, so it's okay. And I found a little information from her in regards to it. It's always good to have some additional information on how to raise capital stuff. So, yeah.
All right.
Sounds good.
I'm Jody.
Hi, Jody.
Hi, hello, everybody. And, big supporter of Ron. We work together on a lot of projects, and it's always good to have knowledge. And knowledge of money is even more powerful, so.
Pretty much. You're
Did
up.
you say amen?
I said pretty much.
My name is Gail, and I'm interested in equity funding because I turned 60 last year. I can't get anything anywhere. Because they ask you what year you graduated high school, so they're skirting that little issue of how old you are. So I started lying.
Just say I did.
Yeah, I only took 20 years off, so I guess 40 still kind of okay. So, yeah, and I've known Ron way back from his Ferndale days.
Cool.
Cool. Well, my name is Niles Aaron. I am a founder and the business development / creative guy for Michigan Funders. We are an equity crowdfunding platform built around the Michigan Invest Locally exemption. I'm gonna say all this stuff again when we get formally started, probably, depending on who else walks in. But the idea of equity crowdfunding is I guess one of the challenges for me is understanding how much people know in the room.
Definitions, please.
Awesome, okay. Heidi walked in and knew everything already.
No, I didn't.
She kind of did, like a little bit she did. And so I just wanted to know where we're starting from. Overview, we're gonna talk about crowdfunding in general, like what it is. And then we'll talk about why there have been changes in crowdfunding in the last 2 years. And then again, why in Michigan specifically, crowdfunding is doing some really interesting things. This market specifically, there are, I guess, 12 states that have active intrastate crowdfunding legislation that has passed. And it really opens some interesting doors in terms of the way you can solicit investments and the way you can get people behind your business idea or behind your business growth if you have an existing business, whatever that is. And so we think it's a really powerful tool and a really great opportunity, especially for classically disenfranchised entrepreneurs. Whether that means you're a minority or a woman or just being genuine. Like, there are people, access to capital is not equal. This is not a level playing field. It's just the world we live in. Whether that's because of where you were born or how you were born or whatever, like that's just the nature of things. But if you have community support, if you have a good idea, it's our contention at least that you shouldn't be limited for anything other than your work or anything other than your idea and what you can produce. So we think crowdfunding is pretty awesome.
Hi, I'm David Tesler. Niles and I are partners, co-founders of Michigan Funders. Formerly the CEO, but I'm not sure what I do every day that makes me the CEO. My background is definitely in small business, probably going on my 11th or 12th company that I'm running. I've been running companies for about 15 years now, right out of high school and even while in high school. So entrepreneurship has always kind of been in my blood, always something that I've loved. And just over the years, I've faced the hurdles of raising capital, whether it be from private investors, angel investors, from the banks, maxing out credit cards because you need to, buy your goods. So I've been kind of on all spectrums of the field, helped other people raise capital for their businesses, and really started to take a look a few years ago at the way that crowdfunding was affecting small business and large business and the finance industry. Got involved and started doing some angel investing of my own, and just started really to look at how these portals existed on the internet, what made them so interesting, and how I thought it was just really a game changer to the hold that the banks had on small businesses. And then kind of just stumbled into this Michigan legislature that was in the process of passing. Got really excited about how I thought it was so much better than the national crowdfunding legislature. Called this guy up, he was working for a company, we had dinner, and a few weeks later, he was leaving his job, and we were starting Michigan Funders. So we've been developing this technology, working through the laws and everything that surrounds it for the last about 8, 9 months now. And we're getting ready to launch, and we're super excited, and we think people in Michigan are excited about it, which is why we're here, so. Yeah.
I'm gonna assume that Ron is ready for us to get started, and I guess Larry's gonna ask. Are we ready?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, cool. At a very top level, I think one of the things that I see happening in the crowdfunding industry at large is that there's not consensus on what it is. And part of that is because it's not like a new thing. Everyone kind of looks at crowdfunding and thinks of it as being this new idea. But it's not. It's not at all. I mean, when I was a kid, you would go to, you have a walkathon or whatever the charity drive is that year in your school, some sort of civic engagement process or project, and you would go to everybody and say, can you give me $5? You're trying to raise $100, and then they all kind of sponsor you in whatever the charity thing is. That's crowdfunding. You know, I need $100, I don't have $100, and I'm gonna go to a bunch of people and get $5 or $10 each until I have $100. I'm gonna write them down and say thank you, right? That's crowdfunding. Or I need to start a business, and I need $50,000 or $20,000 or whatever. I need to buy a new oven so I can bake cupcakes, so I can sell cupcakes, so I can make money, so I can buy a bigger oven, so I can move down this road, right? And it's $20,000 for a specialized cupcake oven, I don't know. Like, and you go and you talk to a bunch of different people and you get $1,000 each. Maybe they're your friends, maybe they're your family, whatever. These are people you know them. This is your network, your expanded friends and family network, right? And you say, I need this for this reason. And they each give you a little bit, and you get there and you buy it and you're off to the races. I mean, this is not like a new story. The only thing that has changed, the only reason we call it crowdfunding now is that people put it on the internet and said, as opposed to me physically walking to 20 people, I'm going to email 20 people a link. I'm going to make a website that is specifically devoted to this fundraising effort. It really took off with websites like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe, Rocket Hub, CrowdRise. Like, I mean, Edward Norton backs CrowdRise and it's in all the commercials now. Whatever. I mean, like, this is not a new thing, except that when it started in those Kickstarters and Indiegogos and various platforms that really quickly differentiated themselves. Some were for like arts and making movies, and some of them were for prototyping. I have this new thing I want to sell. The difference is that those platforms all work on the assumption that I believe in your product as an investor. Each of you are starting a business, each of you puts a website up. I believe in you, and so I'm giving you money. That's cool. Free money. You get taxed on it, but okay, free money. But I'm not expecting anything back. I just believe in you. I'm just a donor. I can write it off, maybe, if you're a 501c3, right? It's a donation. In 2012, Barack Obama passed what is now referred to as the Jobs Act. That's Jumpstart Our Business Startups. And he legalized something that had started to happen. It certainly started to happen and take off overseas in Europe and in, I want to say Australia. There was another country that was really kind of prominent, or region, I should say, that was really prominent in establishing what's called equity crowdfunding. But we'll call it Europe for all intents and purposes, right? Barack Obama passes this law that says now, instead of just taking donations, you can take investments in securities. That was previously restricted because the Securities and Exchange Commission owns basically all of the regulation about how you can solicit investments from the public. The idea is that if I put a website up, I can't control who goes there. It's not just going to be my friends, it's going to be random Joe and Jane on the internet. That's a violation of the Security and Exchange Commission's protocols that were established in like 1933, banning general solicitation, saying that you cannot request an investment from someone you do not have a pre-existing relationship with.
unless you're a public company.
Unless you're a public company and willing to pay the Securities and Exchange Commission an exorbitant amount of money to go through an IPO filing, which no startup can ever do, nor would they. Because how do you put a strong enough valuation on a company that doesn't have any revenue yet, that is still trying to scale and figure out its model? You need early believers, not people who will buy a standardized share, in theory, right? Well, the Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act, the Jobs Act, says, actually, we don't agree with that anymore. You can now solicit investment from anyone you see fit to solicit an investment from. As long as it's a standardized offering, as long as I'm giving each of you the same opportunity to invest, I can ask all of you, and I did not know you 2 hours ago, right? We didn't have a pre-existing relationship. And you can do that over the internet through crowdfunding portals. That's 2012. The Jobs Act has two provisions that are important for the purposes of this discussion, and that's Title II and Title III. Title II says you can solicit these sorts of investments from anyone who is an accredited investor, someone who is making $200,000 or more per year, $300,000 as a household, or has net assets of $1 million minus their primary residence. Like after you subtract the value of a primary residence, they still have $1 million in the bank. Or net, or assets of that, right? That's the top 3.6% of America. So you're talking about 96.4% of America who cannot invest. Which basically means you're asking angel investors at large to invest in your idea. Now you're talking about a group of people who is relatively motivated to redistribute and to make their money work for them, right? You're talking about people who want to invest for the most part. You got $500,000 a year coming in, you got a few million in the bank, you're willing to invest in some high-risk securities, you're willing to invest into some ideas that might show you 10, 100 times return, right? If you invested $1,000 into Uber, when Uber started in 2011, that $1,000 is worth about $5 million right now. Here's the rub. No one invested $1,000 into Uber, they invested millions of dollars into Uber. People who could only invest $1,000 into Uber weren't allowed to invest $1,000 into Uber. And Uber was one of the first real successes of the crowdfunding idea. They had a huge syndicate round for their Series A. It was like 30 investors or something like that. That's almost unheard of when it comes to small startup companies. But they had a crowdfunded, literally, round of people who invested. I know one of the guys who did it. He's worth an exorbitant amount of money, but he already owned a Tesla in 2011 when he invested into Uber. He was already rich. You know, he was already worth millions of dollars, and now he's worth billions of dollars, right? There's a problem with that to me. Only allowing the richest 3.5% of Americans to invest in exciting new ideas. These are the types of things that change the world sometimes. Ubers, Facebooks. I mean, Facebook might as well be in the dictionary.
It's that misconception that because you are wealthy or have money, that makes you sophisticated and gives you the know-withal to invest in these type of ventures.
And I think even more than that, it's the assumption that because you don't have money, you are not a sophisticated investor. It's the flip side of that coin that is really the damning piece, right?
I have a question.
I don't think that that's true.
Yes.
I know your question.
No, go ahead.
I'm thinking the original intention was people investing who could afford to lose them.
100%, that was the original intention. I tend not to agree, and this is my personal feeling, you don't have to agree with this part. It's my personal feeling that if I make money, if I go out and work every day, if I pull a check in, I keep the lights on in my house, what I do with my discretionary income is my business.
I agree with you. I'm just saying.
I'm sure, absolutely, but the same people genuinely can walk into MGM Grand and put it all on black. They can put it all on 00 and just let it roll and see what happens.
And we'll, fast forward, we'll get to the fact that Michigan has restrictions on how much you can invest as an individual.
Right.
So, kind of the goal of this is, if there's an offering out there, if you are not accredited, you would not be allowed to invest more than $10,000 in an offering. you can invest as little as $100 in that offering. So the goal is to make this more accessible to the everyday person. We're no longer asking for everybody to put $25,000 down, $100,000 down. It's about the fact that you can buy into something great for $100. And maybe that $100 means as much to you as that $1 million that the guy invested in Uber. It's about opening that opportunity on a much smaller scale, the power of the crowd. If there's many of us, the investment can be smaller, but it has the same power as a whole.
It also means that the risk profile is lessened, right? If it's gonna take $100,000 to start a business, one person has to be ready to lose $100,000. That's a chunk, I don't care who it is, right? No one who is, I don't care if the $100,000 objectively matters as much as the $100 does to somebody else. No one who can give you $100,000 is going to throw $100,000 anywhere. Otherwise, they wouldn't have $100,000 to throw anywhere, because it'd all be gone. It's too easy to spend money. So the idea is that by allowing a large group of people to invest in an idea, and then truly finding a way to open that up beyond just the 3.6% of Americans who are sitting at the top and have the wealth-heavy portion of America, by opening that process up to America at large, there are a lot of benefits. So Title II establishes the accredited investor class. That's the Jobs Act in 2012. Title III never passed, but Title III would have established the non-accredited investor. Again, as David was mentioning, there are limits on how much you can invest.
Based on income.
Based on income, you can invest, I think, up to 10%. They're still trying to figure out what Title III will actually be.
There's suggestions out there, but
yeah, I mean,
there's no law written and it is not passed. So what happened is they got through the accredited investor phase, so now crowdfunding portals online right now, if you're national, you can solicit accredited investors. But you can, at this point, not solicit unaccredited investors. So you're still soliciting a very small portion of the people to invest in these businesses, and still the very wealthy.
right. And one of the challenges of that is, as a business who is offering your company up, you're offering a percentage of equity or a debt offering to raise money, to raise capital for your operating or your startup or whatever, right? If you can only solicit accredited investors, how do you find them? Genuine question. I can talk to a room full of people. I don't know how much any of you make. You don't know how much I make. Technically, we can't talk about something if the litmus for our discussion is that you're rich and that I'm rich, right? I can't know that without you disclosing, you saying, hey, by the way, I heard you have some investment opportunities. I'm rich, is that cool? And I say, yeah, that's great. Come on, let's talk, and now we can have this discussion. But before that, I couldn't have told you that I was raising money, really. If and when Title III passes, that will be a watershed moment. But it's taken a long time. 2012, this law, this act, this umbrella of laws actually came into effect. And it's 2015 and this hasn't passed yet, right? Various states started to get restless. There are 15 states, I believe, that have either passed or are in the process of passing intrastate exemptions to the Jobs Act. What those intrastate exemptions say are, we are actually going to allow, so long as the investor and the investment are located within our state, we're going to let anybody invest. Governor Snyder, you like him, you don't like him, he's a businessman. And comes from a private equity background and an entrepreneurial background, and really aggressively attacked this idea, or pursued this idea. He didn't try to bring it down, he tried to put it up, right? And said, if you're a Michigan investor, you can invest in anything you want. Literally, I'm giving you, you got casinos. There's no reason that the money shouldn't go somewhere that you think it might double or triple or quadruple or whatever. And I don't mean to liken this to a casino, but I do mean to say that it's a risky investment. That's the reason that there's legislation to say what you can and can't do and where you can and can't invest. But when it comes to crowdfunding, in Michigan, as of December 2013, any Michigan investor can invest in any Michigan business. Any Michigan business can raise up to $2 million if they want to pay for a CPA audit. They can raise up to $1 million if they do not want to pay for a CPA audit. And they can do that via crowdfunding small equity investments from many, many investors, where there used to be a 25, is it 25?
35, I think,
Investor limit
for on a credit.
well, no, 35 investor limit on a business. Like the business could have how many, there was a limit on the number of investors you could have
Right.
in your business. That's been upped to 2,500. You know, you can take a lot of investors on legally these days, per the Jobs Act. Or per the Michigan Invest Locally exemption, which is what Snyder passed in 2013.
Yes.
Question, Heidi?
So would you, if I had a business idea and I got it formatted in a way that you can understand it, you like it, would your business, MichiganFunders.com, do the equity crowdfunding for me? Or are you gonna teach me how to crowdfund?
Yes,
Okay,
and I'm gonna get there.
oh, okay.
So, as this law passes in Michigan, one of the things that happens is that previous ban we had, where we could only talk to rich investors, we could only talk to the top 3.6% of Americans, that goes away. Because within Michigan, all I need is that you live here. 100% of Michigan residents, 18 and over, can invest in this platform and through this sort of method. And at that point, you start having a really interesting model for how you can go out and find people to invest in your businesses. So we looked at that and said, that's great. I was living in San Francisco when the Jobs Act passed and started to see some of the crowdfunding portals build there, and there's just such a culture of venture capital and private equity investments happening. The tech innovation scene in San Francisco is astounding. I love Michigan. I did not love San Francisco. I moved back here, but that was something to see. The amount of money that gets thrown around by those top VCs and the top private equity investors in this country is astounding. And watching which companies got funded, sometimes you just shake your head. You're just like, really? You gave them how much? I don't see it. Granted, I don't need to. The point I'm making is just about the fact that everybody has a different view. So the idea that only a small number of people who control a whole lot of equity should be the people determining which companies get funded and which companies don't, that's a lot like playing God in the business world. And I just don't think that that's something that only a few people in one city or one state or one area should be given the power to do. You should have alternate funding. David and I were sitting down, like you said, talking over dinner. He was talking about the Michigan-specific legislation that had passed. At that point, it had passed 5 months before or 6 months before we sat down and talked. And we think that there's a lot happening in Michigan in terms of both ideas and entrepreneurial spirit, which has probably always been here, but is certainly in an upswing. And we think that there are a lot of people who want to invest in it. There are a lot of people not wanting to leave Michigan with their money, with their time, with their energy, with any of it. And so, getting to your question, Michigan Funders is a equity crowdfunding portal that operates specifically within Michigan. So we only deal with Michigan investors, we only deal with Michigan ventures. And we look to secure equity or debt offerings for those companies. We work with real estate developers, startups, expanding businesses, and we are set to launch on February 19th. So we are still in the process of both bringing investors into the fold, bringing businesses up to speed. Some businesses need more help than others, right? So some businesses have a great idea, phenomenal idea, and not a shred of a clue in terms of how to execute that. If it's a good enough idea, the last thing I want is to say, sorry, I don't see the execution, have a good day, to somebody. So we usually sit down and talk to them and say, here's what we think. Here's how we would go about it. David is a serial entrepreneur. I've certainly,
That's good.
I've certainly watched. I wish I could even take credit for it. I heard it and stole it from somewhere. So David's a serial entrepreneur and has a real good mind for how to go about setting up a business. And I like telling stories, and I'm a writer by nature, and enjoy designing and marketing and branding, and come from a business development background, which is all about positioning. It's all about putting a story together and crafting a narrative that someone can understand and really conceptualize in terms of how your business works for them and how your business matters to them. And so between the two of us, we can usually say, you know, I really like this idea if you pivot about 30 degrees to the left, right? And so that's a big part of what we end up doing. And some of the businesses that are going to be launching with us on February 19th are the result of that exact kind of process, where a great idea walked through the door that didn't really know its head from its tail, or knew a lot of things and could have told you where its head and tail were, and we said, yeah, I think that that's probably not how you should label things. You know, they had a real good idea on how they wanted to do stuff, and we said, yeah, but maybe do this another way. And you know, it's your idea. Listen, if you don't like the advice, you can still launch on our portal. And at the end of the day, I can't run your campaign for you no matter what. But this is how I would go about it. And I don't know, we see both of those services and those interactions as being necessary in terms of developing the small business community and really trying to invest in seeing small businesses grow here. And being able to use the tool that crowdfunding, or that an internet crowdfunding portal can provide you. I would love to know if you guys have questions at this point, but it's clearly I can talk.
So to answer your question a little further, the technology on the portal is set up for you to kind of do it yourself. So to go on and load your documents, if you need to upload a video, if there's a business plan, an investor deck, all those capabilities are there. We are here to service people and to help them through that process. There are certain things by law we cannot help you with, and you will want to see an attorney and or a CPA or a professional, but in any way that we can legally help, we're here for business development. We want to see businesses succeed. With that being said, once your offering goes live on the site, we're not a broker-dealer. We don't take a success fee or a commission off of the money that you raise. We cannot give investment advice to anybody. So we can't go out to a room like this and say, hey, there's a great new offering on our portal, we think you should invest in it. Once it's live, it's up to you to kind of go and pitch your business. We can give you the vehicle, the tool, but we can't say anything in regards to it by law.
We cannot be the people who solicit.
Thank you.
Okay, so, when I talk about marketing, I always make an analogy that, marketing is like a string of pearls. It's all piece, place, positioning, product, pricing. That makes sense. All these P's. And to get your business idea out there, you've got to get it, now there's a portal to put it through, but you want to get it linked. And I don't have a lot of electronic vocabulary because I'm tired right now, but there's a way to get your what you've put out on the internet to hop.
From your social media?
Well, there's the social media is an example, but you want to get it out more and more and more. You don't want it just hanging there on the site.
You want it to go viral.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
In Michigan only, right? Can we, because of the interstate, it can only be investors that are in Michigan?
That
So
is
how
correct.
do I get to that investment community? I mean,
there are a few ways that that happens. First, we expect that that community is going to be growing rapidly as portals like ours come into play. Part of the reason that there isn't a community like that right now is that there's not a portal like this right now. There are companies that can service Michigan and have some offerings in Michigan, but there is not a Michigan-specific portal
Okay,
for
so
equity crowdfunding.
You start talking about this, that once we go live, there's a bunch of things that you folks can't do. I mean, I already have my own attorneys, CPA, bodyguard, yada, yada. But since my business idea is on your portal, can you, I can't think of the P word. Are you gonna be moving your portal around so that more and more
Yes.
investors become?
So what we can do is,
We
we
can promote
always,
the
yeah,
portal.
we always have the right to promote the portal.
Okay.
So it will be our job to promote the portal.
See, it was a
Yeah.
P word.
It was a P word, but it's your job, so the assumption is that there will be people that will come to the portal just to look at deals. They're not coming for your deal, they're coming to look at deals.
Fishing,
Whatever-
yeah.
whatever they are, and they're just coming every day, and they get an email. So the whole mailing list for the portal gets an email that says there's a new deal that's live, and then they come on, they can look at the terms, view your investor deck and everything. But at the same time, to make the assumption that these people will or will not invest in your offering, nobody knows at this point, it's too early. So you have to kind of do the legwork for yourself, through your social media, through your community, through your connections, to go out and say, hey, I'm raising money, because now you can legally do that in the state, and get those people to the portal to look at your deal and potentially make an investment. Because at the end of the day, we know these people are investing in you. You may have a great idea, but the people that know you are investing in you. It's not so much about the idea, it's about, they look at you and they say, wow, she's been so successful, I like her. I want somebody smarter than me, doing something with my money. So it's really, there's a personal touch there, and that's why we feel Michigan's so important, because you can reach people that are here.
Yeah, so do you have, are you finding that that you folks, you two individuals, have an affinity for certain sectors of business, or you just?
Oh, certainly. I mean, personally, I am not incredibly interested in restaurants. I am not. I like eating at them, but I kind of don't. I'd actually rather sit
Right.
at home and cook. So my personal preferences absolutely play in to the businesses that I am good at helping. Tech, I can do that all day. I understand that. It makes sense. I speak that language. David owns a gym in Birmingham, and I like the gym a lot. I try to go because I want to be his size, right? But at the end of the day, I don't know anything about running a gym. We had someone who wanted to run a gym, and they came in and we were talking to him, and the things that he was going through and saying, look, just these are the things you gotta take into account when you're thinking about opening a gym, whether it's from an insurance place or from building a public consumer space, the exit signs and the sprinklers and all that.
Right.
That's just not something I would ever have thought of, nor is it something that I'm great at. And I'm saying this only because over time, I think you'll see the market start to dictate
Right.
what happens. What do people want to see fund?
It will become very specific. It will be a certain sector, a certain industry.
Because that'll be what funds.
Yeah, it'll just be what people are interested in generally.
So right away, anything tech and anything automotive is gonna,
It may-
Maybe, but
yeah.
people also might be tired of automotive. I hear a lot of people tired of automotive. They own GM stock already. They don't want to invest in it.
I mean, what we're gonna do is go out with a very diverse offering. They're gonna include product-based businesses, tech businesses, service-based, real estate-based, some things that are based on the arts, and we're gonna go very diverse. And we're gonna know very quickly through that deal flow within the first 6 months or whatever it is, what funds and what doesn't. Everything will not fund, we know that. Everything will not fund and everything will not succeed, and that's a real market. Those are real risks that you take in putting your business out there, and you also take in investing in a startup.
One of the things we find comfort in, though, is that as an investor, the law and our portal both do a pretty good job. Nothing is perfect, but both of them do at least a comprehensive job of protecting investors from losing their money for nothing. Listen, you invest in a business and the business doesn't succeed, that happens.
Right.
That's part of the risk you're taking as an investor. But the idea that if you need $250,000 to start a business, and you only make it to 130 in terms of your raise, like what happens to that 130,000? Well, the answer is that you don't get it. If you don't raise the amount of money that you need, that you specify at the beginning of your raise.
The minimum raise amount.
That you set a
50,000
minimum raise.
set by the state.
Yeah. But for us, as a portal, what we demand of businesses that raise through our site is that if you're gonna set a minimum and a maximum raise amount, it can't be 50,000 to $1 million. It cannot be.
We demand a use of funds, a source of funds, so, and the state wants to see that on the disclosure form too. So there's kind of a process that you will go through with the state. We've actually just submitted the first one of this year, a few days ago, to the state for review, and they basically say, we want to see your business plan. We want to see a public disclosure that gives these specific details about the business. Who are you? Who owns this business? What are you raising? What's the minimum? What's the max? What's the use of the funds? So I'm using it for advertising, I'm using it for repairs on my building, to buy new inventory, whatever it may be. So all these disclosures, and then statements about where you're at. Listen, I'm a startup company. I don't have an operating history. I don't have any plans to hire new employees. That may negatively affect the outcome of my financial projections. So all these kind of statements that you have to really look at as a startup or an expanding business and disclose those to the public so they really know what they're investing in. Then they want a copy of an escrow agreement with a Michigan bank that says your minimum's 50, your maximum is $100,000. That money will stay in escrow until you reach your minimum. So you have 1 year to raise the money, but you need to set a term. We don't suggest setting a year because it's just a really long time for anybody to have their money sitting out in escrow. And if you don't raise the money in the first 3 or 4 or 6 months, you're probably not gonna raise it in the next 6 months. So let's say your term is 3 months. Until you hit that $50,000 minimum, the money stays in escrow. If you fall short at the end of your term, if you end up at $49,900, that money will go back to all the investors. You will not get it. But at which point you reach the minimum, you get to start taking the money out, and you can continue to raise for your term up towards the maximum amount. So there are some protections to make sure that you put out a business offering for $50,000, I invest $5,000, I'm not the only one that invested, you get to grab my $5,000 and then you fail because you didn't have enough money and you knew that to begin with. So there are a lot of protections that are built into kind of what the state is doing and how we look at things, and we say, if you're gonna raise 50 to 200, you need to tell us at each stage, if you get 50, how do you succeed? If you get 100, how do you succeed? If you get 200, how are you more successful and do you create more revenue? So you're not just grabbing money because you think this is free money, because it's not free money, and it's not easy money. You know, a lot of people make that misconception that crowdfunding, that there's somebody on the other end of this portal just waiting to write a check. It's not the case. You have to work for this money, and you have to go out and raise this money. We've just developed some pretty cool tools and technology to help you do that.
Now, is there some kind of consultation or legislation around how investors get their return? Like,
Yes.
say your business is doing well, and
Right.
you've got 2,500 investors. There needs to be something to help you manage making sure you give your investors.
And that's.
I want to make sure,
Please go ahead.
the question
Mhm.
is, how does the portal and the legislation that the portal operates under deal with investor management once you have successfully raised money? So you raise $250, now you have this $250,000 investment, now you have this business that takes the investment, and the business is doing well. How do you communicate, deal with, pay off, et cetera, the investors that you just took on?
Exactly.
Okay, good.
So the answer to that is, again, the state steps in and says that there's quarterly compliance requirements. So the state says you must quarterly communicate with your investors as to what's going on with the business, any major changes in the management team, revenue, kind of a financial snapshot, so that they're always in the loop of how things are going. Now, that starts to get complicated. You got 2,500 investors, you gotta send out 2,500 letters. Well, we're online, which makes things a lot easier. So one of the things that we offer that, as an offer, you're not required to use, but you need to show that you can adequately do this for your investors, is investor management, as we call it. So through the portal, you can communicate with that investor class. You can send out one message quarterly, monthly, weekly, however much you want to communicate with them, but quarterly is required, to say this is what's going on with the business through the portal. People can direct message you through the portal. Hey, I've got a question, so they're not calling you on the phone and driving you crazy, because 2,500 investors can drive you crazy. But they know it's in the terms that they must communicate through the portal. and that you may or may not answer those questions, but quarterly, you're going to communicate with them. And when it's time to pay them back, you can do that electronically through the portal. And at the end of the year, when it's time to do a tax form, if you so choose, you can have the portal generate those tax forms for, your CPA gives us all the information, it gets inputted, and then we generate the K-1s or the 1099s, or whatever may be required. So investor management is huge. I mean, we have companies coming to us saying, hey, I don't ever want to do a crowdfunding raise, but can I use your investor management system? Because it's really difficult for me to manage Aunt Sally and Grandma and Joe down the street and this person. And it'd be so amazing if they just had one place to go to, so they stopped calling me asking where their money is. Because we all know when we go out and we raise money from these people, it's a headache. There's a lot of strings that come attached with money, but if I get a sheet that says like, these are my rights, I go and I buy stock in Ford. I don't walk into the Ford dealership and think I'm gonna drive off with a free car. So we wanna make sure, because sometimes people invest in your business, and Grandma thinks all of a sudden that she gets a free shirt or she gets this. We love Grandma, but we're in this to make money, so we wanna manage everyone's expectations, whether you know them or not. Put the investor management in one place, and also make sure that you're complying with the state, and you have happy investors, because you want these people to continue to invest in you. You want to grow, and you want this to be a partnership. So it's very, very important that there are expectations that once you raise this money, you don't just run away with it, and when you decide to pay somebody, it'll be in the terms of your offering, how and when, and at what qualifying events you have to pay people back. And you better do those things, or you're gonna have the state's attorney right on your back, because they're looking at this, and this is a very serious thing. We're dealing with securities, there's compliance, and this is not free money. So we can't stress how serious it is to comply with the terms that you put out in your offering and manage your investors' expectations properly.
Is there investor education also?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
After launch, sessions like this are gonna be happening a lot more. One of the things that we've been trying to make a mantra of what we do is that, product over people. Like until my website is launched, until I can walk you through it and really show you something tangible, talking in abstract about crowdfunding is fun. I like doing it. I've been doing it for the last 6 or 8 months. But it's not as valuable as really sitting down and saying, here's the website. Pull it up on your phone. Let me show you where you can ask your questions. Let me direct you to our education sub-portal where we're talking about what is a convertible note? What does equity mean really? What's the difference between a debt and an equity offering? And it's one of the things that we got to talk about in a few minutes here. But those terms can be really confusing to people. You're reading over a subscription agreement to buy a convertible note or to buy equity in a company, and they're explaining that, don't worry, there are no capital calls for this agreement. What's a capital call? That can be a dissuading proposition for someone who's trying to invest money in your business. And so it's really important to us that anything that could be confusing, either there's always a chat window in the corner of your screen where you can say, hey, what does this mean? Help. Or there's a button at the top where you can say, show me all of the frequently asked questions, show me all
glossary.
of the glossary, show me how to educate this. And so every time we see questions coming from events like this, discussions we add those to our list, and we make sure we have an answer that's kind of there and ready for that. So,
How many offerings do you want to have on your site when you go live, when you launch?
we're gonna have probably upwards of 10 by the time we go live. Some of those are gonna be interest checks, which is a company that wants to see whether or not crowdfunding is going to be viable. The truth of it is, we would love to think that we can all fund everything from within our network, and I can call people, and before I even put an offering up, I know where the 50,000 is coming from, or I know where the 100,000 is coming from. And I'm really just using this to standardize everything and to make this a very streamlined and efficient process. But the truth is that if I knew where 100,000 was coming from all the time, I wouldn't need 100,000, right? But that means that there's a risk here. It costs money to do a crowdfunding campaign. I am a for-profit business, right? Make no mistake about it. I am in this because I think that there is money in facilitating crowdfunding, just as much as I know that there's money within actually raising money via crowdfunding, right? And so you have to be ready to spend that money. And it's not an exorbitant amount, because our goal and the way we actually will be successful as a company is by volume, not by 5 deals and we tax them, exorbitantly, right? It's 50 deals, and we take a reasonable amount from each of them, which is why we can't run the campaign for people as well, just from a bandwidth place. For us to be successful, there has to be a volume of deals. The work we do is going into the campaign to say, do you have the things that it takes to present a business effectively? Do I think you're trying to defraud investors? These are the things that we are going to spend the most time doing, is curating and saying, I just don't see how this business makes money. The numbers don't make sense. Even if you could find investors, you might need to go use another portal because I just don't see it, right? That's a question we're always going to ask. But once the campaign's live, I can't really help. Regardless, this costs money. If you don't know that you can get the public support that it would take to successfully raise $100,000, what we offer is a very low-cost model. You still have to commit something because there's bandwidth and considerations for us that we have to go under, right? But you can launch an interest check to say, hey, public, friends, family, internet at large, would you be interested in investing if I were to make this a public thing? And they can say, yeah, that's worth $1,000 to me, or that's worth $100 to me, or whatever. And you can see how much you get. And since users of the site will be doing this, and users on both ends, you can actually communicate within the portal. So I launch an interest check and say, I need to raise $100,000. Would you be willing to invest, or would you be interested in investing? And then David says, yeah, actually, I'd give you $20,000. I can then send David a message and say, I saw that you committed $20,000. You can vet that out, and it's not just a flippant thing. Someone can just type it and walk away, and then you end up putting it out live, and they're nowhere to be found, right? You can actually communicate with the potential investors and really start that dialogue, and say, well, if you would invest 20, what makes it worth it to you at 30? You could have that discussion genuinely, and say, why do you know other people who might be willing to invest in this? Because you haven't made a deal public yet. That's the beauty of an interest check, is you can actually start a discussion around investment without having to commit to a deal term just yet. And so we think that there's a lot of value in that, especially in the early going, before there's an active and hopefully somewhat ravenous investment community circling the deals like sharks. Shark Tank with 2,500 people would be pretty awesome if you could pitch to that kind of a group. But that's the goal.
And it's really a process you have to go through. I think it becomes much simpler. The first time that I invested in crowdfunding, I didn't know what a convertible note was. I didn't know what accredited meant. I didn't know what any of the terms meant, but I took the time. There were no local resources. I just, I called my CPA, I called my broker, I called all these people, and some people might not even have those resources. That's why this glossary and the blog, these things are so important, because I had to do a lot of research to get comfortable with making some pretty large investments into startup companies, signing these subscription agreements, getting accreditation checks. So we want to make sure that people are very comfortable with, because they will have to answer significant questions about, do you have a high school diploma? Do you have a college degree? How much money do you make? Where are your investments now? So there's certain questions that people will have to answer. They won't have to do it over and over and over, but there's some questions that may make some people uncomfortable. And it doesn't mean you can't invest. It just means it's the issuer's responsibility to collect that information and then decide when they get your subscription agreement, you don't have a high school diploma, you don't have a job, this is more than 20% of your net worth. I don't think I want to take this person's $1,000 because it's just not right. So there will be that kind of looking at all the subscription agreements and making sure the investors are right for you, and you have the right as an offeror to reject somebody. To say, listen, I'm not going to take your last $1,000. I need you to take your $1,000 and go feed your kids or whatever it is. It's not coming to me. So there is some social responsibility there to make sure that when people answer those questions and they're subscribing to a company, that they're doing it in a responsible way. That's the responsibility of the issuer. We don't step in and say you can or you can't, but when you review the subscription agreements,
but before an issuer closes their round out, they are very aware of who the investors
Yes.
are. They see that list, the list that says these 50 people are the people who have invested money. This is the money that's sitting in your escrow account right now. And they can do their due diligence at that point, and we require that they
Yeah.
do their due diligence. They have to sign off and
And
say,
you accept all your
I
risks.
accept these investors. I mean, like, it's incredibly important to us that everything is very transparent for everyone, that people know what they're doing and they know what they're getting into. To answer your question, because I know that I tangent off and just run
No,
off
you're
into the
good, you're good.
distance, is probably 3 to 4 companies have been in discussion with us for the past 2 or 3 weeks now, recent additions, that are gonna do interest checks. We're not gonna try to rush and launch with them, but they're really excited about the platform, they really want to launch and really want to do a crowdfunding raise, and so we're gonna involve them in our launch in that they will be publicly visible. And then another 5 companies that are gonna be doing actual raises.
Do you have a punch list of things that we need to have together to use your portal?
There are a few options. Do I have a punch list together for you today in this moment? No. I did not print one out. I should have, I apologize.
No, it's okay, I'm just.
Do I have a list that I can give you of the things you need? Absolutely. So there are cards on the
Right.
table. One of them has a website. You can go to the website, and if you click, there's a button that says business, right?
Yeah.
And when you click business, it'll take you to a sign-up page. You can give me your information and I'll contact you, or you can email me at info@michiganfunders.com. Or I have a personal card on the table, and you can email me at that address, or give me a call. I can absolutely give you that information. I'm very accessible, and we think it's pretty easy. We've also looked at it every day for the last 6 months, so I'm a little bit too close to always judge that.
I mean, it isn't easy, it just depends on how familiar you are with these types of things.
And how prepared you are
Yeah.
right now, you know?
I mean, and we've seen all spec, we had a guy come in the other day, had an 85-page business plan, and he had been working on it for 16 months, and.
He might be watching right now.
Right.
You know.
And that's how long and hard he decided to
Yeah.
work on what he was doing. And there was some phenomenal stuff in there. I mean, he still had a ways to go, but there was some really great stuff in there. You could show that he had done his homework. And we have people that walk in with something scribbled on a napkin, and they're like, "I've got an idea, I'm ready to go." And there's values in both of those things. There's value in the person who has a napkin, because they may have the greatest idea ever, and it's literally just on a napkin. And there could have been nothing of substance in that guy's 85 pages, except a bunch of, just over and over and over.
Charts
Yeah.
and graphs, and charts
Yeah.
and graphs.
And a lot of people are good at charts and graphs, it doesn't mean you have a good idea. So we see our people come in at all different stages that understand the terminology, that don't understand the terminology, and we really look at, first and foremost, who they are. The idea is important, but the operator is just as important, because at the end of the day, money is not the number one reason that small businesses fail, it's the number 2 reason. Number 1 is improper management, because you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't know how to manage it, and you don't know what you're doing, you will lose that money. So for us, it's very important, and that's why we focus on being here in Michigan, where we can be in rooms like this and talk to people and shake someone's hand, to know who the business operator is, to know that you have the proper understanding, to at least be responsible with this money, and to make a valid effort. Everyone will not succeed, but we really want to feel that the right management is in place for the right idea. And if it's not, we'll be the first ones to tell you, in a constructive way, that maybe you need to go out and find a partner. Maybe you need to go out and find a CEO or whoever it is, because you've got a great idea, but you don't have the wherewithal to actually run a business, because they're 2 different things. Everybody's got a great idea.
Or the experience to run a
Yeah.
business. You might have all the wherewithal, and you might be the
Fair
most
enough, yeah.
competent person I have ever met. And you might have a business. Unfortunately, the most competent people in the world usually have some of the best ideas, right? In theory. And the best ideas often take the most money to fund. The biggest ideas. You're not going to make $100 billion or any number with a billion on it from an idea that only takes 25,000 to fund, probably. It's just like the multiples just don't end up working that way, right? If you've never run a business before, if you have no one on your team who's ever run a business or who's ever been adjacent to a business being run, you taking on $500,000 or $1 million in equity investments, I'm not comfortable. You've never been there before. You don't understand. You might have read it in a book. I hear you. That's cool. Have you been there, right? I wouldn't take on $500,000 in investment for a company that I'm running without a team behind me, and I think I'm quite confident. But I would call David, because he's done that. But, and that's how you have to think about this, because you're talking about other people's money. And it sounds cool because it's not your money, until you then think about the fact that it's actually other people's money, right? Someone worked hard for this money. And if you owe it to them to really take it seriously. And that's part of what we end up saying. I actually like people who walk in with stuff scribbled on napkins because it means they haven't committed to anything yet. You know, in terms of just talking about ideas, that's when you can say, here's how I would pivot. This is what I think you should do.
And there's,
Yeah.
there's
So when
a-
you watch an 85-page business plan, this is what they're doing.
Right.
Like you're,
He wasn't ready to pivot.
yeah, and I actually really like his business. I think that if he decides, he can do some interesting things within the crowdfunding space. But, you know,
But
you sit alone making that type of thing, and you get like that much of a view of it.
there's a social responsibility behind it. When we talk about investing locally, getting the community involved, that's really who's investing in your idea. There's just a really big social responsibility of taking money from your local community and putting it towards the right things. And we think that that's important, and we want to do everything that we can to make sure that we're building local communities. When you invest money locally, it continues to circulate that local economy, and that's really important. I mean, Michigan and Detroit was hit really hard, and we're still rebuilding, and we think that this is a phenomenal tool when the banks aren't lending. When that SBA loan is really hard to get, and the venture capitalists and the angel investors, they're on the West Coast, or on, in New York, or they're just not concerned with the $100,000, $200,000 small business. We started $50,000.
Certainly not the $200,000 small business in Detroit right now. I mean,
Right.
there's no one from San Francisco flying here to make a $200,000 investment. The Gilbert guys are doing some good things in terms of supporting their small businesses.
So, there's the Gilbert Hub,
Mhm.
and then there's the Foxtown Hub,
Yep.
Mhm.
and they're gonna put that big ice hockey arena there.
Yeah.
The Illich stuff.
So,
Right.
some property is gonna disappear,
Yep.
but then there's property right next to the property that's gonna disappear,
Mhm.
that's gonna pop.
Sure.
So, my brother bought a house for $1 in those properties that are gonna pop.
Brother's a smart man.
And, he's, can't get a home improvement loan.
Mhm.
And it's structurally, it's got great bones. It's one of those nice big Edwardian
Mhm.
houses down there.
Mhm.
And,
How much does he think the renovation's gonna take?
I think it would be 30. You could get a C of O and begin operating a B&B with 30K
Mhm. And then he needs some operating money, and so if he needed 50,
max.
50 is the
Max.
minimum that you can
In
raise.
the state of Michigan.
Yeah. So they do, so if he could justify needing $50,000, he would be a phenomenal candidate for crowdfunding, because you're right. The bank, most likely, because they're risk adverse, is not going to loan the money for that project. But there's a lot of people interested in investing in Detroit, and it's one of the hot, downtown, that 7.1 miles is one of the hottest real estate markets. We are very focused on outside of that 7.1 miles because we think that's really important too. But I think that would be a phenomenal project
Would
for
you
crowdfunding.
consider something, would that concept be a viable for him?
If he could hit that $50,000 minimum and show where the funds were going, then we would absolutely be interested.
Oh, yeah, he's already, these, you have to have a certificate of occupancy
Yeah,
in Detroit. You don't in these smaller communities.
Sure.
They just, and so, Detroit doesn't ever want to get its housing stock in the condition it's in now.
Right.
So the C of O stuff's not gonna go away.
and listen, if you're running a bed and breakfast, how important that you have a C&O. I mean, there's some validity behind why they make you get that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like it. So, he already has, licensed, bonded, insured contractors. He's
Yep.
got a couple bids for all of it. So, he's lining it all up, and, he'd like to get some stuff done, as soon as possible.
And it's going into that season, so I would say you took a card, have them call us. I mean, the worst thing we'll do is we'll hear them out, and if it's not right, we'll tell them it's not right, but it sounds from what you say, it could be a good opportunity.
The repayment stuff is,
Yep.
you know, he doesn't want any salt on his tail, so he's gonna, you know, he'll do a sensible repayment to the investors,
Mhm.
but he'll want that off right away.
Yep.
That may, you know,
As he should.
yeah.
And the nice thing about, again, you set your terms, so he may be someone that says, listen, I wanna get this money paid back as soon as possible, so I'm gonna be more aggressive in how I pay this money back. And there's other people out there that say, you know, I'd rather pay longer over time because I need that money, you know, for operating or whatever it is. So depending on who you are and what your business needs, you can set the terms. And it may be, you know, a straight debt offering, it may be a revenue share. It sounds like he does not want to give up equity in the business. He wants to really borrow the money in repay it back to the investors and do it quickly, which is something that I think a lot of people are interested in.
And that brings up the only other real structured discussion we need to have tonight, which is when you're talking about equity crowdfunding, just like when you're talking about regular crowdfunding, these are terms that people have made for umbrellas of action, right? Equity crowdfunding, it can be, when you talk about equity crowdfunding at least, that can be in reference to a number of different types of offerings that you can make. You're really talking about secured crowdfunding, secured investment crowdfunding is the most, I guess, specific term that I think is worth using for that. But you can do a debt offering. There are a few levels of debt offerings. A debt would mean I'm taking a loan as opposed to selling off ownership in my business, right? I want to retain 100% ownership, or I have mixed ownership now in my business. You know, I own 50%, my brother owns 30%, my dad owns 20%. Three of us, we don't want to dilute or change our operating agreement. We're already making money or have a very clear path to money. And so offering a debt note, taking a loan from the crowd at large is viable because I know how I'm paying you back. I'm not asking you to just believe in my idea. I'm saying, look at my profit. Look at the money that my business generates. I will pay you from this. Once you can secure your business that way, you might be able to collateralize your receivables, depending on what you're doing, or your inventory. I mean, once you start having assets as a business, you can start taking a loan as opposed to selling off ownership in your company. Ownership is absolutely the most attractive thing you can do from a on-paper, top-level story place, right? You know, you're becoming an owner in my business. There's something about that statement that's really exciting. But that might not be the best investment. We have a real estate offering just to, you know, prove the concept you're talking about. There's a development firm that owns a real estate property in Detroit, in Glastonbury, right? They are taking $50,000 to redevelop that house. And then when they redevelop it, they feel like it's worth whatever the multiple is of what they bought for and what they're in it for at that point after that redevelopment effort. They're gonna pay back, I think that their proposition was 13% on the money that they take. That's better than you're gonna get from an investment place. Once you start talking about looking at investors that are knowledgeable about the investments they've made in the past, if you tell anybody that they can get 13% on their money, that's a good investment.
And they have an asset as collateral, so.
Right, if you default, I'm coming for your house. I'm gonna be an owner of your house, right? Whatever percentage of that is mine. You know, if I put $1,000 towards their 50, I now own 2%.
And as a class, let's say they default, as a class, in theory, based on the terms of the offering, you could vote to sell the property or whatever you wanted to do with it, and the majority of that class of investors make the decision, you're in it for 50, let's just say you dumped it and you got back 40, everybody would share in the 40, and they would take their loss. But at the end of the day, the whole goal is that this real estate company knows what they're doing, they redevelop this property, they've got the comps to support it, they've got a good realtor, a good developer behind them, they sell this property, and we're getting our interest back. And we're moving on to the next one, and 13% starts to compound really quickly.
Right.
So, I mean,
Right.
you start to talk about getting your numbers up. I mean, I don't know, my portfolio did like 4.3% or something this last year. But when I saw my stockbroker today, I was pretty upset. So if I can start to talk about even, getting up to 8, 9, 10%, they don't sound exciting, those numbers, but when you really think about what those numbers mean and the impact they can have over 10 years or 15 years, it really is exciting. And that's kind of how real estate, I mean, you will have the opportunity to own equity in properties, to share in the revenue of some
Yeah,
developments.
commercial properties, equity makes a lot of sense, right? If you can get it. Because it's a commercial property, it's gonna be around for the next 20, 25, 30 years, it's gonna be a revenue generating business. Commercial properties, I rent out, you got tenants, you got, whether it's a residential commercial property where you have a huge apartment building or a storefront, a strip mall, right? I mean, like, either way, you're generating revenue. So you want the 15, 20-year money if you're investing into a commercial property. That's the point of it, right? Getting back 13% is great. It's a really solid investment, quite frankly, if you can get that kind of debt on a commercial property, because you know it's gonna pay back. It's commercial, it's not gonna fail.
I mean, if you're buying a REIT, you're getting back,
Exactly.
5, 6% right now is kind of where you're seeing things. So it's just that opportunity now to have the access to these type of investments as an investor. That's what's really exciting, is before, nobody was coming to this room and saying, hey, I've got this great idea for a real estate project, do you wanna give me some money? And I'm gonna pay you back 13%, 20%, 9%, whatever it is, because they couldn't, because there was a rule called general solicitation since 1933, that was against the law. And Michigan has passed this really great exemption, which says if you register with the state and you work with a portal like us, you can now solicit individuals, which means either through the portal or literally walk up to somebody on the street, if you can make the general assumption that they live in Michigan, and say, you look like somebody who likes a great idea. How about you invest in this? Go to MichiganFunders.com and find out more about it. And all of a sudden, the people in that neighborhood get to invest in that house. And they get to see a house that is underserved and maybe is vacant or whatever it is. They get to build it up and be a part of making it beautiful and build their community. And bring good people into their community. And that's really important for building a small neighborhood that maybe is not in that 7.1 miles downtown. And that's how change happens. And that's what we're about, starting small, and it'll start with 20 investors, and we'll wake up one day and it'll be 100, and before we know it, we're in a $400 trillion, or billion dollar, I always say trillion, economy here.
Hopeful. We're optimistic. Michigan Funders are an optimistic platform, trying to get some
Billion.
T's on it.
But there's a lot of people here. So think about the power of 100,000 people with investment potential, what that means to ideas. And when you can go on a site, put up an idea, in 16 hours later, you're funded. That's the power of 100,000 investors. We're not there. It's gonna be a lot of time before we get there, but that's the thought. It's like, I got something solid, I put it on that portal, and I'm not waiting 6 months for my SBA loan. It's like, there's people lined up to get in on a good idea because they want to make these investments and they understand the power of entrepreneurship and what we're doing here in Michigan, and it's exciting.
It is. And I'm gonna, open up questions if anybody has them. But
How much does it cost to join?
Nothing.
as an investor,
No, as a person that wants to do equity crowdfunding through your site.
So that, it's really dependent on what you need, what your offering is. What I can say is there are a lot of crowdfunding sites out there that charge a success fee or a percentage of the raise, and that can fluctuate anywhere between, as little as 3% and can go as high as 15%. So there are sites that take significant amounts of the money that you raise. We try to make it as more affordable as possible because we believe in the volume of the deals as opposed to taking a lot of money from one offerer. So we charge a setup fee, there's a monthly hosting fee, there are some banking and financial transaction fees associated with it, which are kind of out of our control. And then if you decide to go with us for investor management, there's a charge for those services. But what we feel compared to industry standard are very minimal charges than you would see other places. So
Do we have to use your bank or can we use my credit union?
your credit union probably does not have escrow accounts because they're a credit union. If your credit union will hold an escrow account for crowdfunding, we are happy to use them. A lot of banks will not.
we know because we asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not much on banks, that's why I'm with
Yeah.
credit unions.
But, and again, a lot of credit unions don't offer escrow services.
And there's no reason that you have to keep the money
Yeah,
in the bank.
they will
We need to use an escrow account legally to protect investors while you are
Right.
doing a
Yeah,
raise.
it's fine.
Once
Yeah.
you finish your raise, you
Direct it
don't
wherever
have
you
to
want,
stay at the
within the
bank.
state.
Listen,
Yeah.
we love our bank.
Right,
You don't have to.
right.
You gotta trust that the escrow agreement is binding and safe for you as an offerer, as a fundraiser, right? And then when it's done, tell them to cut you a check.
or wire transfer the money.
So
I guess a check is probably not the right way.
how much of our business plan do we have to post out there? I mean, do we have to put the whole McGill out there?
So you will have to put the whole thing to the state, which is private.
Okay.
So the state will want to see your whole business plan. How much of it they're reading, I can't tell you, because I'm not the state, but they'll want to see the whole thing, they'll want to see your disclosure statement, they'll want to see the copy of your escrow agreement, certificate of good standing, a few other documents that they need. They review it.
Yeah, it's a
and-
package
yeah.
that you put together.
Then it's up to you, you have to post that disclosure statement, but it's up to you how much of your
Term
business,
sheet.
your term sheet, it's up to you how much of your business plan you choose to make public. You can also lock it in a deal room where people have to request access to it.
You can say that my business plan is, it is impossible to separate the IP based on which my business is going to be successful.
Yeah, I don't wanna
Yeah.
be writing people, business plans for other people.
No, no.
Yeah, no.
It takes work, you know?
So what we say is put together an investor deck. And then once somebody has, made that soft commitment or whatever it is, if they want a copy of the full plan, then you release the plan to them, you let them in the deal room, maybe you vet them, you email them and say, hey, what's your interest? I mean, I invested in one company and the guy wanted to have a phone call with me before he would, actually didn't invest, but I was going to, wanted to have a phone call with me before he released any documents to me. So I could see his investor deck, the overview, but I couldn't open any documents until we talked on the phone. To be honest, I talked to him on the phone, I didn't like him. So I didn't even, it wouldn't have mattered.
Right.
But
Right.
I may have invested in that company if he would have just let me see the documents. But I was turned off by him and the way that he did business. So you have that opportunity to protect your intellectual property. You must submit, kind of anything that you'll make public on the portal, you must first submit it to the state. You can't change the terms. So you can't be like, oh my God, I'm 2 months into this raise, nobody's interested, let me give them a better interest rate, let me give them more equity. Your deal is your deal. You can remove it and then
Refile.
submit a new offering, and the state charges $100
Every time.
non-refundable fee every time you file with them. So you can do that, but once you're in a raise, the whole point that makes this work is that you're offering the same terms to everybody. Nobody gets special treatment because they're a millionaire, or treated less because they only have $100. Whether you're a $100 buy-in, or you're a $10,000 or $100,000 buy-in, everybody's treated the same. And we think that's
The
important.
minimum is 100, right?
Minimum's 100,
Legally, the minimum is 100. As an offerer,
you can choose.
you can decide the level of investment that you want to solicit. Because ultimately, we're talking about a public posting of what's called a private placement memorandum. It's me saying, I am a privately owned company, I am welcoming investors, exorbitant price on PPMs historically, right? And basically crowdfunding is saying, you can do this for a few $1,000s when it's all said and done, as opposed to literally $45,000 or $50,000 to have a PPM written by a securities attorney. It took a while before our securities attorney, I could see in his face, him like watching his business just
Right.
go away. Because he could just, wait, you want me to do what? For how much? Oh. And that's part of what we're talking about here. The disruption of internet crowdfunding is really, it's changing the way you can put PPMs out there and privately solicit or publicly solicit, investments.
But to his point, you may not want to take on a $100 investor,
Yeah.
because it might be too much trouble to go through for you to take on a $100 investment. You might wanna start at 500, you might wanna start at 1,000, and that transaction costs money. So moving the money costs money, so when you start to think about taking on a $100 investor, and if it costs $12, say, to move the money, you're already only at you're only at $88, or they're at 112 invested, and if their return's gonna be 140, it's not a great investment anymore. So you may
You're gonna
want-
pay it back over time, right? And so,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you your $32 in 8.
But here's why it's important,
22.
so maybe you eat that $12 for the 88, because you want them as a brand ambassador. You think it's important to have those 2,500 investors, because now they're running around talking about, I own a piece of this, and they're selling your product. Right.
Yeah.
So that, you may think about it and say, no, I want $100 investors, because they are also brand ambassadors. So that's the kind of value out of the money. But to me, I might say, listen, I'm not taking anybody below $1,000.
I run a B2B business.
Yeah,
I don't need you as a brand ambassador.
you
I
don't,
just
you
need
don't
the
add
money.
any value. So I don't want the responsibility of, you know, tax time and compliance time and the management, even though the portal handles it really well. Listen, people, you still have a fiduciary responsibility to these people to at some point address their questions and concerns because they invested in you. And that can get pretty cumbersome at 2,500 people unless you see a value in them running around town talking about your new cell phone case or your new bottle of water or anything that it is, you may see value in that. And that's why we leave it up to you.
There's different kinds of businesses in Michigan, for example, there's LLCs,
Yep.
LLPs,
Mhm.
and there's 501c3s.
Yep.
there's
S Corp, C Corp.
Right, right. What kind of businesses
The best, the
can you,
easiest.
can you not be?
Can't be a 501c3
Yeah, you have to be for profit.
Okay.
if you're taking investments.
So there's a few restrictions, and again, I'm not a securities attorney, so this is just my interpretation, don't hold it as the law. So LLCs, S Corps, C Corps, when you start to get into what they call a blank check company, that's where the state disallows it. So I don't know what I'm doing with this money, I don't have a plan, but I'm gonna raise some money to invest it in something else. That's not allowed. Or I wanna go around and raise a bunch of money, and I wanna buy real estate and I wanna flip it. I'm not making any improvements to it. I'm not
Buy
a
and
developer.
hold
Is not allowed. Not I wanna rent it out and I'm gonna be a property manager, but literally I'm raising money to make another investment is not allowed. So I'm raising money to go buy stocks. I'm raising money to go invest in other crowdfunding raises. So those types of things are not allowed. So you must have a purpose for the funds. You can't just be a blank check company. I wanna raise $500,000 because I think someday I'm gonna have a good idea and I want that $500,000 to be there. You'd be surprised what people think they can do. So
You
that-
can go on Kickstarter for that.
yeah,
You tell them about, kid made like 80,000 on potato salad. on Kickstarter. Seriously, it happened. Google
crazy
it.
stuff.
Google potato salad.
Yeah.
Kickstarter will come up.
So you must have a purpose, a
Phenomenal.
use for the funds, a legitimate Michigan business. It can be an LLC, it can be a partnership, it can be a corporation, it can be a sole proprietor. It cannot be a sole proprietorship because you're taking on an investor class. So you need to be some type of corporation, LLC. LLP could get a little complicated just because of the way the law is
Are you looking
structured.
at these LLFs, liquid liability family corporations? Colorado's doing others out in that area.
I've actually never heard of that.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna write.
Not
It's
gonna,
an
I'm not gonna lie, I go look it up.
LLF.
If I was on the internet, I'd be like, yeah, and I'd be looking it up.
Yeah, limited liability,
Okay,
Yeah,
family-owned business type.
yeah, but it's
Interesting.
interesting. Colorado's, you know,
Hey.
a cutting edge state
Oh,
for the
yes,
things that
they
they do.
yeah.
Rules.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a very young space, crowdfunding, it's very interesting. What I can say is, we're gonna get a lot of interpretation on what works and what doesn't work, and the only way we're gonna get that is by trial and error. We've gotta go out there, we've gotta try a whole bunch of things. I assume the state's gonna come back and say you can do some things like this, you can't, and we're open to guidance and interpretation. We have, 2 securities attorneys that we work with, but we make, no pretense about knowing everything about the law or crowdfunding, because I don't think even the guys that wrote the law know everything about it, because we're just trying to act within the spirit of it, and we
Yeah,
wanna protect
that's-
businesses and investors, but we think the idea is really great.
There's a passage in startup where you're a one-man band,
Yeah.
and sometimes that can be fun. Other times it gets exhausting. And I sort of want to pick what I want to be.
Two-man bands aren't a whole lot less exhausting.
Yeah.
Well,
for what
but
it's worth.
it's, there are some things that I just know I don't want to do. I want to do the thing. I don't want to do the thing and market the thing and sell the thing and,
Yeah,
you
I get it.
Yeah.
and,
You wanna do what you wanna do,
yeah, well, if you do it well,
and that's all that you should do,
But-
yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
That's God intervening, right?
Anybody else have any questions? Been awfully quiet there on the couch back there.
Been writing.
Okay, all right. Our newbie
Dude.
that didn't introduce herself?
That's true. We
Oh,
did,
no.
we didn't put you on the spot.
Yeah,
I
no.
thought about it,
Yeah.
but there was like a back and forth happening. I didn't wanna ruin that moment.
And I couldn't go ahead.
Just names, sorry.
Yeah.
Just now.
Hi, I'm Jenny Hendricks.
Very nice to meet you, Jane.
And now I'm gonna ask, what about crowdfunding interests you? Because we've been talking, I know that, plus and minus. Really, I know Jay.
What did she say?
She said you dragged her here.
She did,
Yeah.
she
She
did.
said she wasn't even gonna come, and then like, then you were late. and- Yeah.
Okay, well, basically to find out what, since it's new, to find out basically what it's about and how it could possibly help in some of the things that I'm working on and that we're working on.
Do you mind telling me what you're working on? It's a small one.
A lot. Basically, I don't have a nonprofit yet. I was thinking of it more of helping in the nonprofit arena, but now that I know it's a possibility as a for-profit, I'm gonna make up something. So I don't have an answer today, but I will figure out a way to make it work for me.
And to be clear, crowdfunding does work for nonprofits.
Yeah, there's a lot of
No,
great
I
sites out
know,
there.
Yeah.
that's what I was familiar
Yeah.
with
Right,
before.
right. We just don't operate in that space.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you come up with that wonderful for-profit idea, which I have no doubt that you will do, come see us.
We will.
Yeah.
We have cards and things.
Are
Ron
we
is
giving
somewhere in the
business
back
cards?
there. Yeah, there's some
Right up
business
there,
cards
yeah.
right
No,
there.
are we giving you our, are we
If you'd
doing
like.
exchange?
If you would like, Ron, do we have questions from the internet?
We do.
Oh, goodness, okay.
I've been talking to one of our people, and the question is, essentially, he runs a property management company. They work with foreclosures, and he wants to raise capital for properties and, for equipment and for like operating capital, like a cushion of capital. So he's wondering for a company like that may not be, super sexy, like a, product that's
Yeah.
gonna be in everyone's kitchen or what have you.
Right.
How would he approach crowdfunding?
For me, it's all about telling a story, right? Once you start talking about equity crowdfunding, you are exiting the realm of the donation and philanthropic heartstring tugging space. You just are. You're talking about money. That's the story.
Okay.
Show me how you are making money. Show me how you are doing that ethically. And if it's a good investment, it's a good investment.
Is being in business only a year an impediment?
There are companies that we are launching with that are not in business yet.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
$0 in the bank, zero knowledge of how you're going to monetize, or at least of a direct path to monetization, not a purchase order, not a guarantee. And quite frankly, the company that I'm talking about has a very unsexy product.
Okay.
But I think it's a great idea. I'm not gonna put them out there like that. You'll just have to log into Michigan Funders on February 19th and figure out what unsexy idea he's talking about. What did he believe in so much that was so unsexy? That's crazy. You'll just have to do that. But I mean, like, their numbers make sense. I get it. I understand why it's a valuable idea, even though they don't have a purchase order. They have some hopes as to who they might talk to, but I get it.
Okay, could we invest in your business, Michigan Funders, or is that for private and not open for stock?
It is private. We are doing a crowdfunding raise.
Ah.
We are.
So it's on the site when you launch.
There
It
will
will be
be
close,
something on
yeah.
the site. I don't know that it's going to make it to public. We're doing a private beta because we have to vet this stuff, right? And so we're the guinea pig. The problem is that we know a lot of people who want to test this out. I don't know that we might have reached our goal by the time we go live. If we have, I'm going to tell you all the one thing that we talk about all the time: do not take more money from anybody that you don't need. Or we know exactly what we're doing with the amount of money we're raising. We think it's not superfluous, but not of dire necessity. Like, we can do without this money, but this will generate a specific improvement to our business that we think is really important. And so we're gonna raise the money to do it and prove that crowdfunding works for us. Because if it doesn't work for us, how can I tell you it works for you, right?
One
That's
more-
sad.
One more
If you wanna give me
question.
$100, like, you can just hand me some money. Like, if you just feel inspired,
That's called donation, and we don't do that.
we know, but I do donation. We don't do donation. But
Right.
I'm a part of
Right,
Michigan
right.
Funders. You can invest in the brand.
In fact,
Sorry.
we'll do an ad hoc partnership right now and raise $200. Anyone want?
I'll sell you a business
Okay.
card.
Sell you a business.
Right. We don't
One more
give those
question.
away for free. Yeah.
One more question. Okay, so in that phase, maybe a month or something like that ahead of time, you guys tell me, what should you be doing before you do your crowdfunding campaign to really get people amped up and ready to participate in it, whether it's equity or rewards?
You can do a lot more before you are generally soliciting than you can after, just in real life. You can start raising awareness for your product. Once you're taking on money, anything you do that's public facing is gonna be about taking on money. Before you're taking on money, you're just a great product, you're just a good business, you're just somebody raising awareness for the thing you're trying to do. Just conceptually, right? If you make a press push, whether that's online, through your social media networks, or whatever, before you're asking people for money, if they already know who you are, when you ask somebody for money, they are much more likely to give you money or to invest in you and believe in your brand. If they only hear about you because you're saying, hey, invest in me, now I'm gonna evaluate this from a different place. The game when it comes to capital fundraising is pre-existing relationships. People who can vouch for your brand.
Plant the
Even
seed.
plant the seed. Even when you're talking about a lack of a general solicitation ban, you're still gonna get more money from people who know you.
Okay.
Recognize that you're gonna need money in 6 months and start working for it now. Don't tell anybody you're gonna need money.
Okay.
Just act as though you need to spread the word about your company, that you need to get people involved. Get brand ambassadors. Figure out which of your friends believe in you and tell them to talk to their friends about it. And don't just talk to them about it for 5 minutes. Biggest mistake that you can make when it comes to like leveraging your network is not explaining your idea thoroughly enough. You think you understand it. I think I understand equity crowdfunding up and down, and I can talk to somebody for 5 minutes, and then I expect them to get it. But then when they send people to me, those people come in the door thinking entirely different things than what I'm talking about, right? Because my friend told his friend, and he said his guy needs some money, and then he comes in and says, I heard you cutting checks. And it's like, no, that's not what this is.
That's not how it works?
No, no, at all, no.
It's
Other way around, actually.
But build a brand.
Yeah.
Whether that brand is you, even if you don't have the idea yet, build the awareness of you and what you're doing and why you are exciting. And then when you have a product or an idea, build the awareness of that. Build the brand, and people will be much more likely to buy into that brand, whatever it is, when you do ask for money. So it's just not turning a switch one day and you're up on the crowdfunding portal and checks are coming and people are giving money. It's like a piggy bank and it's just, you see the dollars coming. It's not gonna happen like that. We may get closer to something like that someday, but right now, you still have to do the legwork. You still gotta find the people to invest in you, because the people I know, they're gonna go on the site, they may like you or they may not. They may like your idea or they may not. I don't know. But you are the best person to sell you. I can't sell you better than you can sell you. And if I can, we've got a problem with you.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's what we tell people. This is not flip a switch, get money. This is not walk in the bank, walk out with a loan, walk out with a check. There is work involved in this, but that work, that time will be well spent, because you will gain dollars if you do it right. You will gain loyal brand ambassadors, people that believe in you, and in a lot of ways will work for you, that have unique skill sets that will offer, unique assets to your company. Whether somebody's a CPA or somebody's an attorney or somebody's, knows somebody on the board of this company that you're trying to get a contract with. You'd be surprised the power of the crowd beyond just the dollars of having 100 people in this community that just know people and go out and talk about what you're doing. All of a sudden, you're a brand. All of a sudden, people know about you, and you can't buy that press. It's organic, and that's what's important.
One more question.
Yeah.
This one is sort of,
And I
it's two
actually, I'm gonna interrupt you and say,
Yeah.
the other thing that entrepreneurs, especially startup entrepreneurs, need to understand,
Mhm.
have skin in the game.
Okay.
Don't walk to me and say, I haven't invested a dime in this yet, I'd like you to invest 50,000.
That doesn't work either?
People say it all the time.
Yeah.
People say, I have this great idea to build this thing, and you say, well, what are you in it for,
Mhm.
right? And they're like, oh, I haven't invested any money yet, I don't have any, and that may be true, but tell me you put your last $1,000 to get the business plan,
The
or
business
you-
cards,
you
anything.
you went you went into debt for something, you believed in this enough to put yourself on the line. Don't tell me you're not exposed and you would like me to expose myself as an investor. Never gonna happen.
Is there a certain ratio that's good to you?
I think it depends on the investor.
Okay.
Listen, David and I have dramatically different net worths,
Okay.
right? He might feel more comfortable backing something or less comfortable backing something than I would. But if I see the value in it, and I see that if I don't see the entrepreneur as believing in their own product enough to
That's what it's
invest their
about,
own
yeah.
money in it,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, I say that the ratio is difficult because the investors are all difficult. You're talking about a crowd. It's not like there's an average amount of debt of venture capital overall as an industry looks for. I mean, crowdfunding is just too new to say what that ratio is. There isn't the data to make that claim.
And again, it's a people game. If I see someone and I like them, in one company I invested, I watched the guy, didn't really understand the company, but I went on YouTube and I watched a 7-minute TED Talk that this guy did. And he was phenomenal. And all of a sudden I understood everything that he did and I thought it was a great idea. And 20 minutes later I was investing in the company. But before that, I didn't understand what he did. I didn't quite understand how the numbers worked. I didn't understand any of it. But I loved him so much that if you had told me he had put 500 hours in or $500,000, it wouldn't have mattered. Because once I saw him, I knew I was investing in him. So I think it'll be different depending on the idea, the person, and who you are and how you feel. Some people might be straight numbers people that say, listen, if you don't have 20 grand or 20% of your own money towards whatever you're raising, I'm not coming in on it. And they might be straight, I know a lot of straight numbers people, they only play the numbers. I play the numbers, but I also play the people. I believe in people, and I think to have great numbers, you have to have great people. There will be people that say, hey, I'm just gonna bet on this thing over here because I think it sounds like a great idea. They might never open up the financials. You're gonna have people that do all types of things. You're supposed to do your due diligence, you should have a CPA review the numbers, but people won't. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, I
No,
think,
we're saying it's wrong. It is wrong to not have
I'm-
an independent professional
do the due diligence, right? Right.
help you to at least understand everything that is
Yeah.
said.
I'm saying, once you
in the
understand it, what
financials.
decision you make,
Right.
I can't say is
No,
right or wrong.
people-
But, yeah, you should know the numbers. But I'm telling you, there's people out there that, I hope they don't do it on our side, but the crowdfund right now, that they might never open up the financials. They may look at somebody and say, I like him, I like this product, whatever it is, I'm investing. And maybe they have the money to do that. What I'm saying is you should have all the facts, and people are gonna have different ratios, different ideals of how they invest in things, just like, different analysts pick different stocks. Different people are gonna pick different crowdfunding ventures, and I don't know who's gonna be right or who's wrong, it's not my job to judge it, just make sure you do
Broker.
due diligence.
Okay.
You know,
But in terms of money,
Yeah.
so,
you bringing a check?
no.
You can turn around. I got really excited.
In terms of money, here you go, $7 million. Our questioner asked, he's trying to raise $5,000 to $10,000.
Yep.
Now that's underneath the floor of your platform,
correct.
right? And I believe he's out of state as well.
Yep.
So the question though is, for that amount, for something like equipment, okay, he's looking for equipment and basically some cash to have on hand.
Mhm.
How do you make that kind of argument, to the crowd? Because again, it's not a sexy product, it's a service business
Right.
where he's helping out HUD properties basically.
Well, here's the question. Where is he?
I think he's in the South, I'm trying to figure that out, but don't know yet.
Okay. And what he does is he does property management, you said, right?
Yeah,
So,
property management for foreclosed properties.
So the type of equipment he's buying is what?
He does like maintenance of the lawns, stuff, some landscaping,
So-
that sort of stuff.
So what if I mean, if he really needs the money, the way I would go about that is to say, let me see where the properties that I'm working on are, right? Let me go to everybody who lives 5 houses up or 5 houses down on the foreclosed properties. I would go to them personally and say, hey, listen, I need to raise some money so I can take care of this foreclosed eyesore on your street. If you donate money, you do a Kickstarter. If you donate money, the reward I'm giving you is I'm gonna take care of your lawns. When I come and do this lawn at the foreclosed property, I'm gonna come to yours too, and I'm gonna take care of the bushes, I'm gonna do all the trimming, I'm gonna use the equipment to benefit you. So you're actually buying a service. You're not donating money.
Right.
You're giving me money to go buy a lawnmower so I can cut your grass for you, so you don't have to worry about that. You get your Saturday mornings back. College football is over, but basketball's still going. There's some value here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, the key to whatever you're doing though, whether it's a donation raising $5,000 to $10,000, or you're talking about $50,000 or $150,000, it's about showing the value to someone's money.
And you made a really good point of, and that's called rewards-based crowdfunding. And something interesting that equity you can do is you can mix in a reward with equity. So you can say, I have a new product, and I'm gonna raise $100,000 when those products come. Maybe you give your investors a discount on it. Maybe you're a restaurant and you give them an investor card that says, anytime I come into this restaurant, I get 10% off of this service, off of this meal, or whatever it is. So you can build a, maybe it's a plaque on the wall that has every investor's name or a brick or something, but something to say, it's not just money, and I value what you're doing, and you mean something to me. So
Yeah,
we can definitely build rewards in it. I think that will be important.
Ale Mary's does that.
Yeah, yep.
That's cool.
So
Yeah,
this,
that would be my suggestion.
That's a great
Is
suggestion. Yeah.
fantastic,
use a
yeah.
donation-based model, just to
Yeah.
be clear. Use a donation-based model. Don't worry about equity, because the amount of money you're gonna end up paying on PPMs and legal and all that stuff,
You'll
it
go
doesn't
negative.
make sense. You'll be in the red before you ever touch cash, right? Don't do that. Go to Kickstarter, and your reward is the service you're providing to the adjacent property. It's a little bit of legwork, but I think you get everybody involved, and honestly, when it's all said and done, because you're only gonna give them a fixed term. You're gonna say, I'm gonna do this for 6 months.
Yeah.
Right.
Or whatever. After that,
Yeah, customers.
they don't want to cut their grass again.
Right.
They don't want those problems. No one wants those problems. And so they're going to pay you.
Right.
They're
that's
gonna
good.
give you money now and give you money later.
So basically, you're recruiting new customers.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Okay, and this is a two-parter, and this will be our last question. So, is it plausible to use crowdfunding in successive series of funding? And whether that's true or not, whether you can or not, is there a cap that you should be looking at to raise with crowdfunding these days?
Yes is the answer to the first question.
Okay.
Right? I can go today to the crowd and say, for Michigan funders, we're selling off 2% of our business for $50,000, right? That's not the number. You could though. You can say whatever you want, and then you successfully raise that 50, right? And then the next time you say, I'm selling 1% of my business for $100,000. I successfully raised the 50. People believe that was my valuation. Then I got that money.
That was a
Now my
pre-money valuation.
my valuation just went up. I still need money, but my business is worth more now. Your dollar, I still want it, but it means less.
Right.
So you can do that.
Okay.
The key is you can't do it at the same time.
What do
You
you
gotta
mean?
close Series A
Before
before
you
you
can launch
open
B.
Series B or Series AA or whatever you're calling it, however you're structuring this, these owners.
Mhm.
You have to close on the first round. You gotta hit your minimum and stop raising money
Okay.
before you can start raising money again under a different valuation.
And even when you come back, those people in your network that you reached out to, they're not gonna be fatigued by the.
They might.
Okay.
They might be fatigued. The people in your network specifically might be
Well,
fatigued.
and
if
the
you
challenge
just
is
tapped
this,
them.
so the term is 1 calendar year. So when you do that first offering, let's say you've got a great idea, you put an offering out there, me as a non-accredited investor, I invest $10,000 in that first round. I will not be able to take part in that second round within 1 calendar year because I've hit my $10,000 max per company.
Right.
So that's one thing to keep in mind. So it's that 1 year, 1 million without an audit. So for 1 calendar year, under Public Act 264, you can raise up to $1 million, 2 million with an audit. And then once you're through that calendar year, whether it's 365 or 366 days, we're figuring that out, you get to start over. It's a clean slate. I can now invest another $10,000. You can raise another $1 million, 2 million. So successfully, you can keep going and going as long as you stay within those confines. Nationally, if you're doing with accredited Title II, there's no limit. Go raise $1 billion if somebody will give it to you.
The one thing to think about, and it's one of the reasons that we think the investor management is so important, right? When you're talking, if you've raised all of your money from non-accredited investors, you raise $50,000 from non-accredited investors, many of whom you only had 4 or 5, 6, or I guess call it 5 or 6 investors. Somehow you get to 50 with non-accredited investors. So you take 6 investments of $9,000 or $8,000 or whatever it ends up being. He's the math guy. He's gonna tell me I'm off by about 10.
Somewhere in between.
Right. Right. When that happens, you're gonna get a report that says these are the people, and you're gonna see that they're non-accredited. You're gonna see that this is the amount of money they indicated that they make every year. Who is buying in is gonna give you an indicator of who's gonna continue to buy in to some degree. There's some analysis that you can do, especially when you start talking about 50 investors, right? Who's investing? Are these people who I think want to invest more? How quickly, what was the velocity on my fundraising? Did I hit 50,000 in a day? Did I hit 50,000 in 2 months? If I had to grind to get to 50, I'm not ready for another raise yet. You know, my brand isn't strong enough. My pull isn't real enough, right? But if I hit 50 in an hour, and there are literally companies in Chicago that are hitting 50 inside of a day.
Wow. Okay.
Right? New restaurant goes up, funded that night.
Wow.
Some of that is clearly pre-orchestrated. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But nonetheless, it was oversubscribed within a day. However much work they did at the beginning. If they want to go at it again, there's value there potentially. And proof that your valuation was low. Right?
What I will say I see is in the companies that, on a national level that I've invested in, the ones that I would invest more in if asked, have not asked me for more money, and the ones I would not like to invest more in, continue to ask me for more. So the point is, if you're prepared and you do your raise properly and you're planning, you shouldn't be coming back to me 4 months later for more money unless something really, really great happened. And if that happened, you're probably not coming back to me because you can get better money somewhere else. That's just the reality of it. I want to invest more in this one company. They're doing phenomenal. But literally every month when I get the update, they're not asking for money to tell me how great they're doing. And this one guy keeps telling me how he's burning through cash and like this, that, and this. He's always asking, can we set up a 15-minute call? And I'm like, no. So that's the thing. So the answer is yes, but I really think if you plan properly, we're not going to see a lot of that succession unless you put like 50,000 out there to kind of test the market, and then you knew already you were going back for more money, which is an interesting way. And they don't do that on a national level because crowdfunding on a national level is expensive. So to keep going out on a national level is really expensive. To keep going out in Michigan is much more cost effective because the costs are so lower. So it'll be interesting to see on an interstate exemption if your theory proves where people go out for more and more rounds because they can do it. On a national level, it's like they're only asking for the money if they're in dire straits.
Okay.
And I'm not, not cutting checks on those companies.
Right.
Okay.
How long have you guys been investing in crowdfunding?
I've been doing it it depends on how you define crowdfunding. So since crowdfunding started, online I've been doing it, but I've been investing in that way kind of as an angel investor for about 12 years now. So.
I write stories. Man.
Just yours. Right? You got skin in the game.
I have skin in the game for what I do because so I'm just to be transparent. I'm 28. I had my last job for 7 years. They hired me and I worked into a lot of different industries within that job as a service organization based in Detroit. Blah blah blah. And I've also been like writing that entire time. But I quit that job of 7 years to start this company. Because I knew that where I wanted my hustle equity and personal equity to go was towards something that I was an owner of. So I really approached this from the other side of the fence. If David is the investor, of the group. I'm kind of coming in as the dreamer and as the like, let's make this idea happen part of the group, and you know, a lot of the operation ends up falling on me in that regard. But a lot of it. I didn't say more of it. I just said a lot of it. Stab you in the neck. So, I have supported some of my friends on various platforms over the years, but I would never call myself an angel investor by any stretch. So I've helped a few businesses, and that's about it.
I just want to commend you guys for being perfect on time. It's 7:55, and my goal was for there to be 5 minutes for shameless self-promotion. So at this point, I would love you guys to tell us here and out there, how can we get in touch with you? How can we be a part of Michigan Funders in the future? What's going on?
Please.
Shameless self-promotion. Apparently, this is my job. This is part of the part that falls on my shoulders.
That equity we were talking about?
Listen, we're really excited. I think I've actually done a good amount of shameless self-promotion throughout the evening. We're really excited about what we're doing. We really think that businesses can succeed from a personal place. I spent a long time on the West Coast, and I moved back and watched Detroit, the city I grew up in, really changing in some dramatic ways, and really not changing in some dramatic ways. When you're outside of that 7.1, that T, you know, the Woodward, New Center, Midtown, Downtown, Rivertown, Jefferson, Corktown kind of thing, like my car has been stolen twice since I moved back, right? And part of the reason that my car got stolen twice is that the street that I lived on, the same street that my grandmother lived on for my entire life, very historically safe neighborhood, you know, like Outer Drive and Coolidge, Outer Drive and Schaefer.
Okay.
Right? Vassar and Schaefer. At
Yeah.
that point. Not a bad neighborhood.
No, nice neighborhood.
Certainly not when I was growing up. There are a lot of abandoned houses there. There are a lot of empty lots. Empty lots are how cars get stripped. Because if I can steal, stealing a car doesn't get you money anymore. Because there are VINs, there are too many ways to get caught with hot cars. Stripping cars is how you get money. You steal the car, you roll it around the corner, you put it in an abandoned lot, and you strip it, and there's no one living there, right? That abandoned lot not only increases the crime rate in the community, it also decreases the home value of the homes surrounding it, right? The reason I was able to so quickly think of a way for your guy with the property management business to come up with, you know, an innovative way to kind of get his neighborhood involved is because that's the exact pitch that I give or suggest when we have the guys who want to open up the spot in Glastonbury, kind of in Rosedale Park. They're doing the redevelopment work there. To me, the best investors for that property are the community, the people who live in that neighborhood. There's an empty house on your block. Your value goes up, your safety goes up, your community continues to redevelop, you become an owner, you become economically tethered in another way to your community. I think that is the important thing. And nothing else really comes from crowdfunding, from a personal place. But we give everybody who lives in Detroit, in the surrounding areas, whether, you live in Warren, I don't care. But you get an opportunity to invest in your community. Like everybody in this room knows that communities are on the decline, not the increase. You don't know your neighbors the same way you used to. But you own 3 houses on your block. You own a piece of 3 houses in your neighborhood. You start caring about who lives there.
Right.
You start asking who is around. Why I own 3 houses on this block. Why can't my kids play outside? You start asking those questions as opposed to just accepting them, because you're an owner now. Right, in a very different way. I think that's a powerful paradigm in terms of like a city on the comeback, especially a city that is, for all of the love and great things, very segregated, right? I think that those are important things that we should have the opportunity to personally impact and not just have to watch and hope that they get better. I think crowdfunding is a great way to do those things. So I think we've done enough self-promoting. Just let's promote community for just a minute, because we talked a lot about money tonight, but that's not the only thing in play. So,
And in terms of that, I would further that and say a state on the comeback, right? You know,
Yeah,
this is where we're at. You know, Michigan is in a place where we're competing to keep people here. You know, not just bring people in or bring new ideas in and new business in, but to keep the current businesses that are here from running out, you know, and to prevent brain drain.
Right.
And I will say that, you know, going forward, we have more workshops planned. We have our State of Success Summit planned for October. So we would love to have you guys come back.
We'd love to be a part of it.
Okay.
Let me know anything we can do.
Yeah.
I will certainly come and talk to you.
All right, you guys in the room, you guys want these guys to come back for like a workshop or something? You sound like a good idea?
It's awkward when you say it to like a small group.
I know, but it sounds
Anybody
like.
who doesn't come, like, I can see you. I'm gonna meet you outside the parking lot. It's okay. You didn't clap.
Right, oh yeah. Great hand.
As you walk to your car, I'll be like,
Right. Seriously, I want to give a great golf clap in hand for David Messler, Miles Herron,
thank you.
and Michigan Fund.
Thank you very much.
Slow clap and then it built up.
Yeah, that's what I do. That's what I do.
I wanna ask if I. What was the difference between the crowdfunding